Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. So, we had some interesting news today, an announcement by Coinbase talking about they're adding support for ERC-20 tokens, the Ethereum based standard for tokens based on that blockchain. And I want to talk about what that could potentially mean in terms of some names that could benefit from that and some names that will likely not be impacted by this announcement, and we'll go into some of that. But first off, let's take a quick look at the charts for Bitcoin to see where we're at. We've seen some selling here today. So going to the 4-hour chart of BTC on Bitstamp, you can see over the last couple of days, we really formed this double top on this 4-hour chart, which broke down today here. And we've been seeing some pretty decent sell volume coming in off of this double top. You can see it all the way down. It's continued to sell. Now it is reaching some pretty oversold levels here at the short term. This is the 4-hour charts. RSI is down to around 30 now, but on the 1-hour chart you can see here it's been living down here at the lows around the sub 20 RSI level, and so I'm expecting a little bit of a bounce here in the near term, maybe into that declining 10 EMA on the 4-hour, which would take us to around 8,200 or so, and up to around the neckline, which broke down around 8,300. That's going to be the key area to watch in terms of reversing this downtrend momentum. The selling pressure has just really been strong over the last couple of days. Every rally has been sold into, and so far we're continuing to see some more downside action. And on the downside, the target to watch here, this double top projects down to around 7,600. So that's the area that I'm going to be keeping an eye on to see if some strong support shows up there, especially on the 4-hour chart as we hit some oversold levels. And so that's where I'm going to be watching to see if this bounces. On the daily chart, you can see this is a little bit of a rollover here, still living below that declining 10 EMA on this daily. And we are now testing this pretty strong support right here on a closing basis. We've not seen it close below that 7,900 level, and so if we can hold that level on a closing basis, that would be positive. Otherwise, we're going to see that downside most recent washout low from about a week and a half ago be tested around 7,300. If we can get a rally here before the close of this day, I'm still looking for the potential of an inverted head and shoulder forming on this daily pattern. But for now, just watching the 4-hour and the 1-hour charts for some near-term action and some potential signs of a reversal here. But all in all, the market remains under pressure. Some of the names that we saw rallying here in the last couple of days, names like Binance, Tron, Icon, some of those are really pulling back to some key support areas. They're offering good secondary entry points, in my opinion, if this pullback is just that off of the low, just a pullback following the rally. And so clearly BTC will lead the market. As it continues to do so, it will have a big influence on there. But if we do find a low in Bitcoin here in the near term, I expect some of those other names that have been strong to see some pretty good bounces off of those current support levels. But let's get to some of the news here on Coinbase. So earlier today, Coinbase sent out a tweet. They also posted a blog talking about adding Ethereum ERC-20 technical standard support for Coinbase in the coming months. So this is not something that's going to happen right away, but they are signaling that this is the direction they're going to move into in terms of adding new assets to their platforms and their different product lines. So what does this mean? And the reason partly for this video is because I was reading a lot of the comments under the announcement, and people were saying add Tron and add Ripple and add Lumens, and just some of the names, and there was a lot of confusion around what really is an ERC-20 token, and so I want to help explain some of that and why some names are much more likely to be impacted by this announcement than others. And so you can see here in their announcement, they're excited to announce support for Ethereum ERC-20's tokens. And one thing to note here is they do have different products, right? So they have the Coinbase app, which you can buy BTC with fiat or Litecoin or some of those. And they also have their trading platform, GDAX. And they've already mentioned that they plan to add more tokens to GDAX ultimately. They want it to be a bigger trading platform than it is now. They do go into some of the reference around the regulatory environment here in this article, talking about how they're going to wait until some of that is cleared up before adding any specific tokens. But what they do note here is that GDAX will likely have more assets listed than the Coinbase platform, meaning you may still not be able to buy some of these ERC-20 tokens directly from the Coinbase app, but you might be able to trade them on the GDAX side of things. And so I expect that they'll continue to develop the exchange platform further than they will the Coinbase side, and probably limit the Coinbase side to a handful of tokens that you can buy directly with fiat. And so that was their announcement. Now, what is ERC-20? And so that's a common question. And ERC-20 is a standard for developers developing Ethereum compliant tokens. And so if I were to issue an ICO and I want it to be an ERC-20 token based on that standard, there are a set of rules, if you will, for the developers to follow so that it's compatible with the Ethereum coins, Ethereum blockchain, smart contracts, and that sort of thing. So the ERC tokens, if you have a wallet for them, their wallet address will look like a Ethereum-based address. And that's because it's following the same protocol. It's the same standard. And so there are different protocols, there's different standards out in the cryptocurrency token world. And so let's go to CoinMarketCap. If you didn't already know, there's a couple of very quick and easy ways to find what protocol or what token they are. And so you can see here there's a tab called coins, and then there's a separate tab called tokens. And so if we go to tokens and we just do the top 100 by market cap, you can see here it'll list several tokens and it'll list the platform that they're on. So EOS, currently based on the Ethereum platform, it is an ERC-20 token. Tron, VeChain, Icon, Binance, OMG, and so forth. And you can see here Ontology, that's based on the Neo platform. Then there's some that are based on Quantum. There's some that are based on Omni and just the different platforms, right? So Ignis is based on Ardor. And so that just gives you a very quick and easy way to see what platform it's based off of. You can also click on the name itself. So when you're looking at the actual price quote on CoinMarketCap, let's go to Ontology. And if you go to the price description here, they'll always put the BTC price. But if you see an additional token name below, so this one says the price in Neo, then that also tells you what protocol this is based off of. And so you'll see that most of these tokens, they'll say ETH under here because they're ERC-20 tokens. And so that's another way to look at those. But going back to the token tab, one thing you will not see on here are the coins that are not ERC-20 or that are not based on other platforms, right? So that's Litecoin, Dash, NEM, Cardano. And so some of those other names, which are either forks of Bitcoin, such as Litecoin, and or their own platforms, such as NEM, Neo is its own token. So that's the difference there. You won't see Ripple on here, right? You won't see Stellar Lumens, which is a fork of Ripple. And so there's that fine distinction. And a lot of the folks that were on the response here on the comments were asking, hey, what about Ripple? What about this? Can you add that now? And so those would not be impacted by this news because they're not ERC-20 tokens. And so even though Coinbase or GDAX could certainly add names like Ripple and some of these other names like Cardano in the future, it's not going to be based on this news about them supporting the ERC-20 tokens because they are not ERC-20 tokens. And so I hope that helps kind of clear some of that up. Now, some of the tokens that are ERC-20 today that still may not be impacted are those that are moving away from the Ethereum blockchain and creating their own protocol. So those like EOS, who's already said, hey, register your tokens by June. Tron's going to be moving away. Icon's going to be moving away. And so a lot of these use the ERC-20 tokens as a means to fund the ICO and to raise some initial capital for their project. But they have been very clear about ultimately moving away from the Ethereum blockchain and creating their own protocols and their own platforms. And so I would not expect for GDAX to add names like EOS or Icon or even Tron based on this news alone, because what's the point of adding a name if they're going to move away from ERC-20 in a couple of months, right? So that's what you got to consider. And they've already come out and said that this is not going to be, they're not going to be adding any names imminently. It's going to still be some time before they decide which names they ultimately decide to add. And so some of these names which are already developing their own blockchains and their own protocols, I would not expect them to be impacted by this. But there are a few names which have reacted much stronger to this announcement. So if we go to some of the names, one of them is 0x. It had a pretty big pump on CoinMarketCap. Going to the chart here, we can see it had a 20-some% increase relatively quickly. So let me go to the 0x chart. This is 0x versus BTC. You can see on the news of the Coinbase ERC-20 announcement, that had a very strong rally off the lows. We're seeing some other names that have long been speculated as potential names being added to GDAX, also reacting positively, basic attention token. And so there's been a few of those that have seen a little bit of a jump just on this announcement of new tokens coming to the exchange. And so why 0x? Why has this one been one of the names that had a very quick and very strong rally? And so 0x is a open protocol that is designed for kind of a decentralized exchange of ERC-20 tokens. That's specifically what this protocol is made to do. And there's other projects already building on the 0x protocol. Some names you may be familiar with, such as Melonport and Maker DAI tokens, Augur, District 0x, which saw some pretty big rallies over the last couple of days. And so there's already projects being there, and they're talking about just some of the tokens, the tokenization of this ecosystem. And they've already developed this off-chain, which you can go check here at this portal DApp. But another big reason that this had such a big benefit, and people have often speculated this in the past already, is because of the advisory board. This team has very close ties to Coinbase already. If you go to the list of advisors on their website, they list the co-founder of Coinbase, they list the first hire of Coinbase and also an angel investor, the prior product manager at Coinbase. So there's some very close ties to Coinbase with this team, which is another reason people have often said that 0x would be added ultimately to Coinbase and to GDAX. So it saw a pretty decent pump off of that initial news. You're seeing a lot of speculation coming around that, but that is the reason we're seeing that. So I just wanted to share that quick update, my thoughts on what this could potentially mean. And ultimately they are going to add tokens, and it would not surprise me to see the names that are added, or when they have that announcement, just like we've seen in the past, those names will likely see a pretty decent, even if it's a short-lived rally on the news itself. So let's take a look at some of the other charts, some of the action we're seeing here near term. So I'm going to go to the daily charts just to kind of zoom out a little bit. Binance, and so I mentioned this in my last video over the last week, had a pretty decent breakout. We saw this rally over the weekend into a key resistance area around that $14 pair, dollar mark on the USD pair. The Bitcoin pair also has a similar pattern. And right now we're seeing a pullback basically right to that breakout point, which is also the 10 EMA on the daily chart. So I'm watching this level here, could serve as a potential strong support area, which is also the breakout point, and potentially offer a secondary entry point on the Binance coin. So looking at ICX, also had a very strong move in the last week. We're finally seeing this one pause and pull back. I did mention in my last video the potential for this pause pullback that was likely because of the bearish divergence we were seeing on that second rally. And so we're seeing that pullback now. It's healthy and it makes sense considering the very strong move it had. And this one also is pausing right now, right around that 10 EMA. So in and around this zone is where we're going to want to see some support start showing up. So far, the pullback has been pretty healthy and contained. The volume is much lighter than the buy volume on the way up. So I'm keeping a close eye on this one. And we're seeing some other names also that had some strong moves, trying to find a low here and put in a little bit of support. Tron was one of those names. So going to Tron, You can see we had that big rally and the pullback, and right now we saw a pretty decent pullback right to the breakout point, also to the 10 EMA. And if we zoom in on the hourly charts just to get a much closer look, we're seeing this initial attempt to break out with some pretty decent volume coming in. And so I'm seeing more and more of these patterns start showing up. Got to keep an eye on Bitcoin ultimately, because that is going to drive a lot of the action in the alts. But some of these stronger names from the last week or so are finding some places of support here in the near term. And so that's what I'm going to be watching going into the next day or so. Just wanted to give you guys that quick update and also talk about that news announcement from Coinbase. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time, take care.